Aiming for a 5, we'll have a look through this video and hopefully that will be a reality. Okay, so to begin with, we're going to do some solving of linear equations. Now, to solve an equation, all you need to do is figure out what the value of x is. So solve means find out the value of the variable, the missing letter. So let's have a look at what's happening. 3x take 7 equals 23. I can represent this in a input-output machine, or a flow diagram, whatever you call it. So what's the first thing that's happening to x? 3x means 3 times by x, so x is being multiplied by 3. Then what's happening to it? Well, I'm subtracting 7, and my output, what comes out, is 23. So all I do is work backwards to figure out what x must be. So to do the inverse, what's the inverse of minus 7? Is plus 7, and then the inverse of timesing by 3 is dividing by 3, and that will give me my final answer. You can either do it using the flow diagram or use this to work it out algebraically. So the first step would be to add 7 to both sides. So 3x is 30, and then the next step is divide by 3. So x is 10. And that's it. Solve the equation, x is 10. We've solved it. All solve means is get it in the form x equals, or if your variable was n, it would be n equals. Now for the next question, it's a little bit trickier because it's got brackets, but when you've got brackets, all you need to remember is that you need to just expand them, which means multiply the number that's on the outside, or the term that's on the outside, by each term inside of the brackets. So 3 times by x would give me 3x, 3 times by negative 2 is negative 6, and that equals x plus 5. Now this looks a little bit harder than the one we did before because we've got x on both sides, and when that happens, what you want to do is circle the smallest variable. So out of 3x and x is smaller. So if we looked at it, actually never mind. So we circle the x and we'd subtract it from both sides. So we've got 2x take 6 equals 5. All I've done is I've circled the smallest variable of the x and subtracted it from both sides. Now, it's in the form of an equation like the one above, so I can use the flow diagram. What's happening to x is being multiplied by 2, and then I subtract 6, and the output is 5. So now I just work in reverse. I would add 6 to both sides and then divide both sides by 2. So let's do that in that order. Add 6 to both sides, so 2x, 5 plus 6 is 11, and then I'd have to divide both sides by 2. So x would be 11 over 2, and this is a calculator paper, so just type it into your calculator and you get 5.5. So here I've got some equivalent expressions. Now what that means is that two things can be expressed in different ways, simplified and non-simplified. So here I have my non-simplified version and I want to simplify it. Now when simplifying algebra, the rules of BIDMAS always apply. So we look at what comes first. Multiplication comes before addition or subtraction, so we have to do that part first. So we've got 2x, which means 2 times x, is being multiplied by x. So that would become 2x squared. And then I write out everything else, leave it as it was. So then I've got 7x take 2x squared plus 9x. I've done the multiplication. Now I need to do any kind of simplification. Now to simplify like terms, they have to be the same base, which means the same letter, like x or y, and to the same power. So x and x squared are not like terms. X could be represented by a length, and x squared would be represented by an area because it's that length times by itself. So the only like terms are 7x and 9x. So then 7x plus 9x gives me 16x, and then I'm left with negative 2x squared. So you remember the sign belongs to the term after it, so that minus, that negative belongs to the 2x. So you keep that there. And then with the next question, we're being asked to circle the expression that is equivalent to 3ab. Now, what does 3ab mean? Well, when a number and a letter are next to each other in algebra, it means they're being multiplied. So 3ab means 3 times a times b Therefore, I would circle the first. So here we've got a slightly tricky question. We are not given that much information, so it's up to us to deduce what we know. So we are shown a square. Now, what do we know about a square? We know that it has 4 equal sides. Okay, so we can use this geometrical fact to help us set up an equation. So I know that each side of this square must be equal to the other. So therefore, 3x plus 3 must equal 7x take 4. So these two sides equal each other, and then I'm left with an equation like the ones I did at the very beginning. So I need to solve this to find the value of x. So find the value of x is the same as solving an equation. So I circle the smallest x variable because there's x on both sides. So I take 3x from both sides, and then I'd be left with 3 equals 4x take 4. Now I could do my little flow diagram if I wanted to. So what's the first thing that's happening to the x? It's being multiplied by 4, and then you're subtracting 4, and 3 comes out. So you have to do the reverse to find what x is. You'd add 4 and then divide by 4. So add 4 to both sides. 3 plus 4 is 7. 7 equals 4x. Then what would you have to do? Divide both sides by 4. So therefore 7 over 4 equals x. And this is a calculator paper. So just type into your calculator. I forgot mine. So 7 over 4 would give you 1.75. You could also work that out. So x is 1.75. So if you are given some kind of diagram, just think, what do you know about that shape? If it's a square, you know the sides are equal. If it's an isosceles triangle, you know that 2 of the sides will be equal. So use that to help set up your equation. Next, we have multiplying out. Now, all multiplying out or expanding a bracket means is let's multiply each term on the outside of the bracket by each term on the inside. Technically, what that means is if I had a length that represented 4x and take 5, I have 3 lots of those. So you could, if you were just expanding a single bracket, draw them out like this to help you visually represent what you're doing. So you're multiplying 4x by 3. So you've got 3 lots of 4x. So that would be 12x. And then you've got 3 lots of negative 5, which is negative 15. And that's all you do. You multiply the first term and then the second term. And that's your bracket expanded. Now it gets a little bit trickier when you've got 2 brackets, but you do exactly the same thing. So you've got 2 lots of 7x, which would give you 14x. 2 lots of negative 3, which is negative 6. And again, you could do your little bar model. So just represent it like that and then write that out twice, so you can visually see what's going on. So that's the first bracket expanded. Now we deal with the second bracket separately because these are 2 separate terms. We know they're separate terms because there's an addition sign between them. So that separates the terms. So then we've got the next terms. 4 times 2x is 8x, and it's going to be a positive 8x because this is a positive 4. Remember, the sign always belongs to the term after it. So 4 times 2x, and then 4 times 8 is 32. And now what we need to do is just collect the like terms. So 14x plus 8x, that would give me 22x. And then negative 6 plus 32, or 32 take 6, would give you positive 26. So that's how you do that question. If you've got 2 brackets, you deal with them one by one if they're 2 separate terms. And here's just another example. If the term you have on the outside is x, so that therefore you're multiplying an x by an x. So when we multiply something by itself, like if I said 5 times 5, that would give me 5 squared, or 25. When we're dealing with algebra, the same rules apply. So x multiplied by x would give you x squared. We just don't know what the final value of x is because we don't know what we need to substitute into it. So an x times by an x, that would give you x squared. So over here we've got x times 3x. You could always write this out like this. So what does 3x mean? It means 3 times by x, and it's being multiplied by x. So I know an x times an x is x squared, so that would be 3x squared. Next, I multiply x by 2. X times 2 is 2x, and that's it. That's all you need to do to expand. Multiply the term on the outside by each term on the inside of the bracket. The next question is slightly trickier because it's double brackets. You're expanding double brackets. It's not similar to the question we did on the last slide because that was 2 different terms, whereas these are 2 brackets being multiplied by each other. Now, there are a few ways you can do it. Either you could say, okay, I multiply each term in the first bracket by each term on the inside of the second bracket, but sometimes people just miss out a term by accident. So the best way is to just set yourself up a little grid, a 4x4 grid, and then write the brackets out. So the first bracket is 2x plus 3, so just separate the terms. The second bracket is x take 4. Now we have this grid, which will help us to remember each of the terms and make sure that none of them are forgotten. So 2x times by x, what does that give me? 2x squared. 3 times x is 3x. 2x times by negative 4 would give me negative 8x. And 3 times 4 is negative 12. So now you've got all 4 of your terms. You can write them out. So you've got 2x squared plus 3x, take 8x plus 12. And it says, sorry, it says expand and simplify. So let's see what terms we can simplify. Remember, to collect like terms, they need to have the same base, so like x, and the same power. So an x squared and an x are not like terms, nor would an x cubed. So the ones that are like terms are 3x and negative 8x. Remember, the sign always belongs to the term after it. So 3 take 8 is negative 5x, and you keep everything else in the equation, in the expression exactly where it is. So you've got 2x squared, take 5x plus 12. And that's your final answer for this. So when we're factorising, what we're looking to do is take out the highest common factor of both terms. So let's start by writing out what these terms actually mean. So 3x, that means 3 times by x. And then I've got 12xy. Now that means 12xy, but I know I'm looking for the highest common factor. So the highest common factor of 3 and 12 is 3. So I'm going to write 12 as a multiple of 3. So how could I create 12 from 3? Well, 3 times by 4 gives me 12. So instead of saying 12, I'd say 3 times 4. And then that's being multiplied by x and multiplied by y. So 3x is the same as 3 times x. 12xy is the same as 3 times 4 times x times y. Now all I need to do, because I've written the 12 in relation to the 3, I circle the highest common factors, the common factors that appear to both. So 3 occurs, as does x. So therefore 3x would be the highest common factor. So I can take that out of both terms and put it outside the bracket. And then what's left over? Well, 3x is a factor, so 3x fits into 12xy. So I've taken everything from that term. So over here I'm going to have to put 1, because if I put 0, anything multiplied by 0 is just 0. So I put 1 because 3x times by 1 is itself. And then for the next term, what's left over? I've got 4 and y, 4 times y. So that would be 4y. So that's how you'd factorise, find the highest common factor, take it out, put it outside the bracket, and then whatever's left over, put it inside the bracket. Now here we're told to factorise completely, so this is a slightly trickier one. So let's once again write it out. So 3yx squared means 3 times y times x, and 12y squared x cubed. Remember, I'm looking for the highest common factor of the numbers. The highest common factor is 3. So let's write that in relation to 3. So 3 times by 4 times by y times x cubed. Now x cubed, remember that little index here, that index tells you how many times the letter is being multiplied by itself. So let's look at what we have in common. We already know 3 is a common factor. Then we've got y, it's just common factor. And then we've got two lots of x. So let's circle that. So therefore 3y, and then x times x gives me x squared. 3yx squared is the largest common factor to both of these terms. Once again, I've used up everything over here, so that would be 1, because 3yx squared times by 1 gives you 3yx squared. And then what's left over here, we've got 4yx, so we'd write that as 4yx or 4xy. It doesn't matter, because in multiplication it doesn't matter what order you multiply things in. And so that would be that one, factorised completely. Okay, so midpoint of a line. Now, all the midpoint of a line means is halfway. Okay, so if we can draw out the line, we just need to figure out where the halfway point is. So I'm told that A has coordinates 0, 2. So when you use coordinates, remember every coordinate is written as the x coordinate first, then the y coordinate. So you go along the x-axis to 0 up to 2. So 0, 2 is over there. And then B is 10, 7. So I go across to 10 and up to 7. Now you're obviously going to use a ruler, but I'm just doing this quickly. It's actually quite a good line without a ruler. Okay, so that's your straight line. Now we have to find the midpoint. So to find the halfway point, we're going to look at the x coordinates. So the x coordinate starts from 0 and it goes to 10. What's halfway of that? Well, to figure out what's halfway, I mean, most of you will know what half of 10 is, so that's 5. But if the numbers are a little bit more complicated, you can add them together and divide by 2. So obviously 0 plus 10 divided by 2 is 5. So I know the x coordinate will be 5, and halfway through the line is 5. Now let's think about the y coordinate. Well, the y coordinates are 2 and then 7. So 2 plus 7 is 9, and 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. So the y coordinate would be 4.5, and my line is almost accurate. So the midpoint is halfway between the two endpoints. So your coordinate would be 5, 4.5. Okay, so when we're dealing with equations of a line, remember that every line can be written in the form y equals mx plus c, where y and x represent the coordinates, m represents the gradient of the line, and c represents the y-intercept. Now, the line that we've been given looks almost like this, except instead of being y, it's 2y. So when we're given something and it isn't y equals, it might be 5y equals or 20y equals, we have to manipulate the equation to get it in the form just y equals. So what does 2y mean? It means y is being multiplied by 2. So if I divide by 2, I would get just y. Now remember, equations are like balanced scales, so whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So if you add something to one side, you need to add the same to the other. In this case, we're dividing both sides by 2, so we have to divide everything by 2. So 2y divided by 2 just give me y. 3 divided by 2, I could just write that as a fraction, 3 over 2, or you could write it as 1.5. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. So the equation of this line would be y equals 1.5x plus 3. Therefore, the y-intercept is 3. Now, this is how they try and catch you out, because it would be really easy to look at this and say, oh, the y-intercept is 6. Except the equation needs to be written in the form y equals mx plus c. Okay, so don't let that catch you out. Okay, so once again, remember that every line can be written in the form y equals mx plus c. And we are being asked to find an equation that is parallel to this line. So what you need to know about parallel lines is that they have the same gradient. So if a line is parallel, they are going to have the same gradient. So let's look at the line AB and figure out what the equation of that must be. So 3y equals 6x plus 9. What did we say? Every line has to be written in the form y equals mx plus c. So we're going to have to divide everything by 3. So 3y divided by 3 gives you y equals 2x plus 3. Okay, so we've got it in the form of the equation of a line. And now we want to identify the gradient. The gradient is always the coefficient of x. So in this case, the gradient of the line is 2. Now, what do we know about parallel lines? They have the same gradient. So you just need to come up with an equation of any line that has a gradient of 2. So y equals 2x plus 8, you could say. Or you could say y equals 2x take 7. Or you could say y equals 2x plus 0.5. Or you could say y equals 2x take 212. It really doesn't matter as long as the gradient is 2. So hopefully we've got it drilled into our heads that every line can be written in the form y equals mx plus c, where m represents the gradient and c is the y-intercept. So now we've been given a graph. Now the y-intercept just means where the line crosses the y-axis. So this is the easiest thing to identify from a graph. Where does the line cross the y-axis? Over here at the point 0, 5, but the y-coordinate is 5. So I could write y equals mx plus 5. Okay, so even if this is as far as you can get, that's still really good because you've still worked out one part of the equation. So if gradient terrifies you, which hopefully it won't after this, but if it does, at least write down the y-intercept. So the next part is to work out the gradient. Now the gradient is the steepness of the line. Okay, and the way you work out the gradient is the change in the y-coordinates divided by the change in the x-coordinates. So let's see what's happening to the y-coordinates, which this is the y-axis over here. So let's see what the distance is. Well, this goes from 9 to 5. So what's the difference between 9 and 5? That's 4. And then over here, what's the difference between 0 and 10? That's 10. So the gradient would be 4 over 10, which you could leave as a fraction or you could convert it into a decimal. So your final equation would be y equals, should we do it? Great. Let's leave it as a fraction, 4/10 x plus 5, because the gradient represents m, the y-intercept is 5. Okay, now just a quick note on the gradient. I've drawn myself like a little triangle. You can draw that triangle as large or as small as you want. So let's just show you why. So over here, let's pick this point and this point here. So that would be 2 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2/5. Okay, 2/5, is that equivalent to 4/10? Yes, it is. Okay, so it doesn't matter how small the triangle is, because the gradient is the steepness of the line, and the line is always going at the same steepness. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a line if it kept on changing. So it doesn't matter where you do your triangle, as long as you work out the difference in the y-coordinates over the difference in the x-coordinates. And that is it. This is your equation of the line. Y equals mx plus c, where m is the gradient, c is the y-intercept. So this is a slightly trickier version of the previous question. So remember, whenever you see equation of a line, how do we write the equation of any line? It's y equals mx plus c. And let's just do it in different colours so that maybe it might just work better for you. So y is mx plus c, where c represents the y-intercept and m is the gradient. So we haven't been given a graph here, so it's going to be slightly trickier. However, we are told that this line is parallel to the line y equals 2x plus 3. So let's look at the line y equals 2x plus 3. What's the gradient of that line? The gradient is always the number that's next to that is the coefficient of x, so the number in front of the x attached to the x. So we know that the gradient of our line must also be 2 because parallel lines have the same gradient. So whatever the gradient is of one, it's going to be exactly the same for the other. Parallel lines have the same gradient. So we can write the first part of our equation, y equals 2x plus c. The next part is trying to work out what the y-intercept is. Now this is where it gets a little bit trickier, but if you know what everything in this equation represents, it shouldn't be that tricky. So we are told that the line passes through the point 3, 4. Now, how do we always write coordinates? As the x coordinate first and then the y coordinate. That means that at this point, x equals 3 and y equals 4. So let's substitute this into our equation. When the y coordinate is 4, the x coordinate is 3. So 2x would be 2 times x, which is 2 times 3, which is 6. And then I'm still left with plus c, which is what I'm trying to figure out. So I've got this equation. I've substituted the values of the coordinate point into the equation. And then I just rearrange it to find the value of c. So I could take 6 from both sides. So 4 take 6 is -2. So -2 must be c. So therefore your final equation would be y equals 2x take 2. And that's your final answer. Okay, so the order of operations, remember that's BIDMAS or BODMAS, however you've been taught it. So it means that brackets come first, then indices, then division, multiplication, and then addition or subtraction. Sometimes it's helpful to think of it as a pyramid. So brackets come first, then indices, so something like x squared, then multiplication and division, and finally addition and subtraction are on the same levels. So over here, what we're going to do first, well, we're going to do the brackets first because that always comes first. So let's rewrite everything else as it is, and we just work out what's inside the bracket. So 6 plus 3 is 9. So instead of writing 6 plus 3, we just write 9. Then what would I do? Well, division and multiplication come beforehand, so let's just circle the multiplication. So we've got to do 5 times 9 and 4 times 21.8. So that would become 3 plus 5 times 9, which is 45, and then 4 times by 21.8 gives me 87.2. So let's add them together. So that would be 48 over 87.2, and then just type that into your calculator. 48 divided by 87.2 gives you 0.5504587.2. If they don't tell you to round it, they normally will, but if they don't, just leave it as 2 decimal places. Okay. So order of operations. The reason we didn't do the divide first is because the things on the top, they count as one whole term. So we need to figure out everything on there, simplify it before we do the division. When it's with a fraction, it's slightly different. The rules are a little bit different. Okay, so next we've got a fraction of a number. So there are 350 people at a conference. 2/7 of the people wear glasses. So let's work out what 2/7 of 350 is. So let's imagine that's split into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parts, and I want to figure out what 2 of those are. So 350 divided by 7 gives me 50. So each part is worth 50. So therefore, how many people wear glasses? 50 plus 50 is 100. So 100 people wear glasses. Then I am told of these people that wear glasses, so of these 100 people, 2/5 want to get laser eye surgery. So once again, set up your little bar model. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this total is 100, because 100 people wear glasses, and 2/5 of this is what I'm after. So let's split 100 divided by 5 is 20. So each part is worth 20 people. So 2 parts would be worth 40 people. So 40 out of these 100 people want to get laser eye surgery. And that's your final answer for that. Okay, then we've got improper fractions. So convert this into a mixed number. So 56 over 6. Well, all that means is how many times does 6 fit into 56? 56. Now, if this was a non-calculator, you could have written out the 6 times tables, but it is calculator. So we could just do 56 divided by 6 into our calculators, and that gives me 9.33333 recurring. Okay, so I know that 6 fits into 56 9 times. So 9 would be my whole number. And then what is 6 times 9? Well, 6 times 9 is 54. So I know that 54 over 6 is equivalent to 9. But what's left over? 2/6. So I'd say 9 and 2/6. Now it says it's a mixed number, and it's most likely going to want you to simplify it to its simplest form. So 2/6, if we divide both top and bottom by 2, that gives us a third. So that would be 9 1/3 as a mixed number. Or alternatively, you might have known that 0.3 recurring is a third, which is great, and you could have just straight converted it then. Okay, here we've got converting a fraction to a decimal. Now this is an easy peasy question because you've got your calculator. What does this line here mean? It means divide. So all I need to do is type 48 divided by 95 into my calculator, or you could even use the fraction button. So 48 divided by 95 gives me 0.50526316, and it says give your answer to 2 decimal places. So that would be 0.5. I circle the second digit after the decimal place, look next door. If it's 5 or more, I add 1 more. So that would be 0.51 to 2 decimal places. So remember, to convert a fraction to a decimal, you just divide the numerator by the denominator. Okay, now a decimal line. So here we've got 6.5 and 7.5, and we need to figure out where the arrow is pointing to. In order to do that, we need to figure out what the intervals that it's going up in. So from 6.5, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the gap is 10 equal parts. And what's the gap between 6.5 and 7.5? There's a gap of 1. So 1 divided by 10 is 0.1. If you couldn't do this, it's a calculator paper, so just use your calculator. So therefore, each little interval is 0.1. So that would be 6.6, 6.7, 6.8, 6.9, so forth. And the arrow is pointing to 6.8. So with a question like this, figure out what your interval is. But if the interval was 5, then we'd do 1 divided by 5. So each little step would be 0.2. Okay, and then a number problem. So Marco wants to hire a DJ for his child's 5th birthday. He is comparing the cost of 2 local DJs. So we've got Mikey Music and BIDMAS DJs. There's a call out charge. So they both charge different rates for just calling them out. And then they both have different hourly rates. Now this formula is used to work out the total cost of hiring the DJ. So the total cost would be their hourly rate times by the number of hours they work, plus the call out charge. Marco wants his party to last 4 hours. How much cheaper is BIDMAS DJs? Well, let's figure out if it is cheaper. So for Mikey Music, we have a call out charge of £75 plus £43 per hour. So I'm going to do 43 times by 4 because Marco says he wants his party to last 4 hours. So 43 times by 4 is 172. So 75 plus 172 gives me £247. So the total cost of Mikey's Music is £247. Now let's do the same thing for BIDMAS's DJs. So we would do call out charge of 120 plus 17 times by 4. So a much cheaper hourly rate. So 17 times by 4 gives me 68. So 120 plus 68 is 188. So BIDMAS as DJs costs £188 to hire for the 4 hours. Now we want to know how much cheaper he is. So we just do 247 take 188. And this is a calculator paper, so don't waste time doing the subtraction. Use the calculator for your advantage. And that would give us £59. So BIDMAS as DJs is £59 cheaper. Okay, so next question, we want to write down the sum. So what does the sum mean? Sum means all of the things added together of all the prime numbers between 20 and 30. So prime numbers, remember, are factors, numbers that only have 2 factors, 1 and itself. Nothing else goes into them. So for instance, people often say that 9 is a prime number, but it isn't, because 1 times 9 makes 9, but so does 3 times 3. If anything other than 1 and the number itself multiplies into that, it is not a prime number. Just so that you should know, the first few prime numbers are 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. These you should kind of know off by heart because they might just, test you on that. So the prime numbers are between 20 and 30. Well, the only even prime number is 2. Okay, so that's the only even prime number. So obviously anything that is in the 2 times tables is immediately discounted. So 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 20, 30, they are not prime numbers. So that leaves us with 21, 23, 25, 27, and 29. Now, generally, anything that ends in a 5 is going to be, well, not generally, always, anything that ends in a 5 is going to be a multiple of 5. So aside from 5, which is one of the first prime numbers, anything that ends in 5 or 0 will be a multiple of 5. 21, we know that 3 times 7 makes 21, so it can't be that. 27, we know that 3 times 9 makes 27. So the only 2 prime numbers between 20 and 30 would be 23 and 29, and we are asked for the sum, so that means we add them together. So 23 plus 29 is 52. Okay, and now cube numbers. Now cube numbers, just like square numbers, are when you have a number, variable, whatever, and it's multiplied by itself 3 times. And as you can see, if we did that, it would form a cube. That's why they are called the cube numbers. Just like a square, if you multiplied a length by itself, would form a square. So x cubed, x squared, and x is just the length. Now, whenever they ask you cube number questions, it's always helpful to just, you've got a calculator, so just write out the cube numbers. You know that 1 cubed is 1, 2 cubed, if you didn't know, and you, just, if you forget where the power button is, just do 2 times 2 times 2. That gives you 8. 3 cubed, that's 27. Remember, you could just do 3 times 3 times 3. Cubed just means multiplied by itself. So the first few cube numbers are 1, 8, 27. Don't get confused with the square numbers, okay? Cube numbers are 1, 8, 27, and then 4 cubed, that would be 64. 4 times 4 times 4. So these are the first few cube numbers. Now, which 2 numbers, when added together, make a cube number? Well, all of these numbers are quite small. So what does 13 plus 5 make? 18. That is not a cube number. 10 plus 6, that makes 16. That is a square number, but not a cube number. 2 plus 6, that makes 8. So I think that's our winner. 2 plus 6 makes 8, which is a cube number. 7 plus 2, that makes 9, which is once again a square number. So don't get confused between cube and square numbers. Okay, then we've got decimal places. Okay, so Here we're being asked to calculate something. You've got a calculator, so just type it in. Now, if you're not super confident on your calculator skills, just do it bit by bit. So work out 34.58 times by 91.76 first. Whoa, that gives you a big number. So that is 3,173.0608. And you want to divide that by 0.234. So if you're not confident typing everything in, then just do it bit by bit. So then we just do that divided by 0.234, which gives us 13,560.0889. Oh, it actually gives you 889. My calculator just truncated it. So let's have a look. We're being asked to give this to 2 decimal places. So you circle the second digit after the decimal point. You look next door. 8 is more than 5. So if it's 5 or more, you're going to round it up or add. You know, if it's 4 or less, you leave everything as it is. It's 5 or more, so that would become 13,560.09. And that's your answer to 2 decimal places. Next part, we've got inequality notation. Now, hopefully you watched the video I did of paper 1, where we went through this in quite a bit of depth. If not, then quick things that you need to know. With an inequality, if the dot above the number is blank, it means it must be less than or greater than. It cannot be equal to it. If the dot is coloured in, then it means it can be equal to that number. So what does this inequality tell us? Well, it tells us that x is, or y or whatever it is in between -4 and 3. Now, we know that it has to be, if it's in between these numbers, it needs to be less than 3 and greater than -4, which means that -4 would be less than whatever x is, and the x needs to be less than or equal to 3. So remember, coloured dot indicates that it could be equal to that number. So it could be 3. So that's all I do. -4 is less than x, which is less than or equal to 3. You always generally set your inequality up like this when it's in between 2 numbers. Just as a quick example, if your inequality looked like this, and let's say that was on 7, 8, 9, 10, then you would just say x is greater than or equal to 7. Okay, so for this inequality here, because the coloured dot is coloured in, which means it can be equal to it. But if you've got 2 dots, then x is in between those 2 values, so we write it as an inequality like this. And next we are told that n is an integer, and write the values of x. That's supposed to say probably n, but whatever. Let's just say x is an integer. So x is an integer, write the values of x such that -11 is less than 2x. Okay, so here we've got an inequality. Now, in order to figure out what the values of x are, we need to get x on its own, just like we would if we were solving an equation. It's just this time we've got 2 sides. So whatever we do to one side, we have to do to all 3 parts of the inequality. So first, I'm going to take 3. So I take 3 from everywhere. So -11, take 3 would be -14 is less than 2x, which is less than or equal to 13 take 3 is 10. Then what do? I'd have to divide by 2 because I'm left with 2x. So divide everything by 2. So -7 is less than x, which is less than or equal to 5. Now remember, it's a blank dot if it's not equal to, so I put a blank dot above -7. It's a colour dot in dot if it can be equal to that number. So I colour this in, and then I just join it up. And that's all of the number stuff. Okay, so here I'm being asked to use a shape that they've already given me to draw another shape. So in this case, I've been given a right-angled triangle, and I want to draw a parallelogram using 4 of these. So let's start somewhere in the middle of the grid. So if I draw one here, that could be, so first of all, what does a parallelogram look like? It's essentially a slanted right angle. So two pairs of equal sides. except they're at an angle. So I want my sides to be angled like that. So how can I combine the 4 triangles? Well, draw 2 there and then the final one over there. Nope. Okay. Not like that. So put your triangle upside down like that. There we go. And then you've got your parallelogram. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So draw it in pencil, obviously, because you might make a little mistake, and then you don't have to worry too much. You can just change it. So that's your parallelogram. Now over here we are told that we have a rectangle, and 4 of these rectangles are made to put together and arranged as shown below. We need to calculate the area of the shaded region. Okay, so let's think about what we know. Well, we know this length here is going to be 0.25 because that's the length of the smaller side of the rectangle. We also know that this length here will be 0.25, this length here, and this length here. So if we know that that would be 0.25, we could see if we could figure out this length of the smaller rectangle. So we know the whole line here, that's the length of the long part of the rectangle, is 5 centimetres. We know that each of these parts is 0.25. So therefore this length here is going to be 5, take away 2 lots of 0.25. 0.25 times by 2 is 0.5. So I do 5 take away 0.5, which is 4.5. So I know that the length of this must be 4.5, because 5 takes 0.25 takes 0.25 gives me 4.5. So that's the length or the width of this shaded area. And then I need to try and figure out the length of it. So over here, this part here, how could I figure that out? Well, I know that this is exactly the length of my rectangle, because the smaller rectangles represent that exact length. So how could I calculate the area of the shaded region? Well, I just do 4.5 times by 5, and it's a calculator paper, so just plug it into your calculator. 4.5 times by 5 gives me 22.5. They haven't given you units, but let's just assume that they said centimetres. If not, then just say units squared if they don't give you anything. Okay, then we've got a parallelogram now. A parallelogram, to work out the area of a parallelogram, we do the base times by the perpendicular height. Okay, so always the perpendicular height, which means the height that is at right angles to the base. So in this case, this is the right angle, this is the perpendicular height. So the area of the parallelogram would just be 8 times by 5, which is 40 centimetres squared. Don't let them fool you, they're going to probably give you the slant height. This is the slant height. We do not use that to calculate the area, because if you think about it, if we chopped this triangle off here and we put it over here, we have a rectangle. And how do we work out the area of a rectangle? Base times height. So do not use the slant height. It's base times perpendicular height for the area of a parallelogram. Next, we have perimeter of a semicircle. So we're not just looking for the circumference, we're looking for the perimeter of the whole shape. So what is the formula for the circumference of a circle? So circumference is pi times by the diameter. Now this is a calculator paper, so you just use your calculator. So pi times the diameter, the circumference is going to be pi times by 12. Now that would be if it was a full circle. However, it is half a circle. So what I'm going to have to do to work out this part here is imagine it's a full circle and then divide it by 2, half it, because it's only half a circle. We don't need all of it. So the circumference would be 12 pi over 2, which is 6 pi. If you're not comfortable working in pi, just type 12 pi into your calculator and then divide the answer by 2. So 6 times by pi is 18.84955, so forth. Okay, so that would give me this part here, 18.849 blah, 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 blah. That is just the curved part of the perimeter. Okay, it's really important that you acknowledge this. And what does perimeter mean? It means all the way around the outside. So to go all the way around the outside of the shape, I'd go along here. So I need this part, but I also need this part here. And the length of the diameter is 12 centimeters. So I'd worked out what the circumference is, halved it because it's a semicircle, and half of the circumference is 18.84. And I add 12 to that. So just leave your answer in your calculator, add 12, and you should get 30.8495 blah, 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 blah. Let's round it to 2 decimal places. The perimeter would be 30.85. Okay, so remember, perimeter means all the way around the outside. That's how they sometimes catch you out. Okay, Pythagoras, one of the most fun, awesome things in maths. So all Pythagoras' theorem states is that a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where a and b are the 2 shorter sides. So imagine that we drew squares around them. The area of the 2 smaller squares would add up to make the area of the largest square. So if we already know what the largest square is, instead of adding, we would subtract. So the first thing you want to do when you're doing Pythagoras is label all of your sides. Now, the first one that we need to know is the hypotenuse, and the hypotenuse is always going to be opposite the right angle. And the hypotenuse is the longest side, and that's why it's important to label it and acknowledge which one is the hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse is 14.9. So I know that in this case, I already have my largest side. And then A and B, it doesn't matter which one's which, because they're both the shorter sides. So I'd rearrange Pythagoras in this case. So instead of saying a squared plus b squared equals c squared, I've been given c. So I'd have to say c squared take a squared equals b squared. Okay, so I've been given the area of the largest side. So let's substitute that into our formula. 14.9 squared, or you could quickly just write what c is. So c is 14.9, a is 6.2. I'm just using this length here and that length here. So do 14.92 squared, take 6.2 squared, and that's going to give me b squared. So let's just quickly do that. 14.9 times by 14.9 gives you 222.01. 6.2 times by 6.2 is 38.44. So 222.01 take 38.44 is 183.57. So b squared, the area of the square of b, is 183.57. So to do the inverse, to work out what the length is, I know the area, I'm going to have to do the square root. So square root both sides. So I type the square root of 183.57. What does that give me? Let's see, I'm using my phone because I can't find my calculator. So that's 13.55 to 2 decimal places. I mean 13.5488 blah blah blah, but let's round it. So the length of the missing side is just 13.55. Okay, so here we've got slightly more difficult Pythagoras question. So calculate the length of AB in the trapezium below. AB, okay, well that's this length here. So what have I been given? I've been given this length here, and this slant height here. Okay, so what I could do is just split this up into a rectangle and a right-angled triangle, because if I have a right-angled triangle, I can use Pythagoras. So let's just sketch out what this triangle's lengths and dimensions would be. Well, I know that this is 12 centimetres, and that's going to be the hypotenuse because my right angle would be here. And now I need to figure out what this little side here is. So I know that this length here is 5 centimetres. So the rectangle, this part here, must also be 5 centimetres. The total length is 8 centimetres. So this part here must be 3 centimetres because 5 plus 3 makes 8. So this length here is 3 centimetres. Once again, I'm going to use Pythagoras' theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But if you've been given the longest side, you would subtract. Okay, so we could say c squared, take a squared equals b squared. It doesn't matter which one's a, which one's b, as long as c is the longest side. So c is 12, so we do 12 squared, take 3 squared, and that would give us b squared. 12 squared is 144, 3 squared is 9. So 144, take 9, gives you 135. So b squared is 135. So how do I work out the length of b, which is this side here? I do the square root of 135, which is 11.6189. So let's round that to 11.62. Now if this length here is 11.62, this length here must also be 11.62 because they are opposite sides of the same rectangle. Okay, then we've got a time problem. So a bus leaves Northampton every 23 minutes and the train leaves Northampton every 30 minutes. At 7 AM, they both leave Northampton at the same time. So let's say the bus leaves at 7 AM. The train also leaves at 7 AM. When's the next time that the bus and train will leave at the same time? So if you're being asked the next time that two things happen at the same time, that's the lowest common multiple question. So there are two ways of doing this. Either you could find the lowest common multiple by doing a Venn diagram, or because you've got a calculator paper, you could just keep adding on the times. So that next bus would be 7:23 AM. The next train would be 7:30 AM. 7:23 plus 23 minutes would give you 7:46 AM, and this would give you 8 AM. So essentially you can see that the trains are going to leave at every half past and every on the hour. So we need to figure out when the bus would also leave either at half past or on the hour. So we could just write out the 23 times tables. So 23, 46. And if you've got your calculator, you can just keep on adding. So add 46, add 23 is 69. Add 23 is 92, 115. And we're looking for either on the hour or on the half hour. So far, no luck. Add 23. Oh dear, this might take a while. 207, 230. 253, 276, 299, 322, 345, 368, 391. Okay, I think this is taking a very long time. So that method would work if they had given you nice little multiples. So instead, what we want to do is find the lowest common multiple, and we can do that using the Venn diagram. So 23, what are the factors of 23? Well, it's a prime number, so only 1 times 23. What are the factors of 30? 1 times 10, 2 times 15. I meant 1 times 30, 3 times 10, and 5 times by 6. So what's common to both of them? So these are the factors of 23, these are factors of 30. Well, one is common to both of them. And that is it. So they have no common factors. So the lowest common multiple is going to be 23 times by 30. So 23 times by 30 is 690, which we would have got there eventually. But if you're given a prime number, life gets a little bit trickier. So 690 is the lowest common multiple. What's 690 in terms of hours? We do 690 divided by 60, which gives you 11.5 hours. So let's just rub a bit of this out. So 690 divided by 60 is 11.5 hours. So if they left at 7 AM, 11.5 hours later would be, well, 12 hours later would be 7 PM. So half an hour earlier would be 6:30 PM. So you could have continued adding 23 minutes, or you could have worked out the lowest common multiple using the Venn diagram method. I think this is an awkward question because it's got a prime number. Normally you wouldn't be given a prime number. So normally just adding the times would work, and you'd eventually get one that got to the same part. Okay, so now we've got a compound shape. It's a compound shape made of circles and a rectangle. So it shows the dimensions of the school running track. Annie does 2 laps of the school track on sports day. And we need to calculate the total distance Annie has run. So in order to calculate the total distance, we're going to need to work out the perimeter of this shape. Now remember, perimeter means all the way around the shape. So it's a rectangle. I don't know if we've been given enough information for this actually. So I know that the side lengths here would be 50 meters. So I could work out the circumference of this. Let's work out the circumference of the perimeter part. So that would be pi times diameter, which is 50 pi. Obviously it's half a circle, so we would halve it. So this part would be 25 pi, but because you've got 2 ends, it's kind of technically like a whole circle. So we can just leave it as 50 pi. So this distance here would be 50 pi. And I don't know if I'm being silly, but I don't think there is enough information to figure out this length here and this length here. Oh, nope, I am being silly. So if you know that the diameter is 50 meters, you could figure out what the radius is. So the diameter is 50 meters and the radius is from the center to the outside. So the radius must be 25 meters. So this distance here must be 25 meters, which means this distance here must also be 25 meters. So here, that's 25, that's 25 over here. So 100 take away 50 is 50. So this part of the rectangle here would be 50 times by 50, which is 2,500, and it's meters. So that'll be 2,500 meters squared. Now let's work out what 50 pi is. So 50 times by pi gives you 157.08, rounded to 2 decimal places, meters squared. And then we just add them together to find the total perimeter. So total perimeter would be 2,657.08 meters squared. Now it says that Annie does 2 laps of it, so this is where they might try and catch you out. you just multiply your answer by 2. So the total distance Annie has run is 5,314.16 meters squared. Okay, now I did round it a bit early, so if you got a slightly different answer, don't worry. And that one, so that nearly caught me out. Remember that if you've been given the diameter, then you will know how to work out the radius. Okay, so that was a little trick in there. Okay, and lastly, working out the volume of a compound shape. So a compound shape is just like the one before, two shapes that have been put together. So here we've got a rectangle and a triangle. So the area of the rectangle, well, I know that this length here is 9 and this length here is 8. So 9 times 8 is 72 centimeters squared. So this area here would be 72 centimeters squared. And then I need to work out what the area of the triangle is. So I know the base is 8 centimeters. And I know the height. Well, I know that this total length is 15. And this length here is 9 centimeters because it's the same as this length here. So 9 plus 6 gives me 15. So this part here must be 6. So therefore the vertical height of the triangle is 6 centimeters. How do you work out the area of a triangle? Area of a triangle is base times by height divided by 2. Okay, if you had a rectangle, you could fit 2 triangles in there. So a triangle is essentially like half a rectangle. So base times height divided by 2. So 6 times 8 divided by 2 is 6 times 8 is 48, divided by 2 is 24 centimeters squared. Okay, so this part here, the area is 24 centimeters squared. So in total, what is the area of the front part, the front face? This whole part here is the front face, and the front face has an area of 72 plus 24, which gives me an area of 96 centimeters squared. Okay, now with a prism, the way you work out the volume is by working out the area of the front face and multiply it by the depth. So in this case, the depth is 20. So I'm just going to do 96 times by 20, which gives me 96 times by 20 is 1,920 centimeters cubed. Volume is where you've multiplied 3 dimensions, so it's going to be okay, so time conversions. Now what's really important is that we know that in an hour there are 60 minutes. Okay, so when we're talking about 2.78 hours, obviously we know that that's not 2.2 hours and 78 minutes, because if it was, then it would be 3 hours. So 0.78 is 0.78 hours. Okay, now how do we convert hours to minutes? Well, we know 1 hour is 60 minutes. So what would we do for 0.78 hours? We'd also multiply that by 60. So when you've got like a part of an hour, just multiply it by 60 as long as it is in decimal form. If it's in fraction form, let's say you had 2 4/5 hours, you just do 4/5 times by 60, or you'd convert it into a decimal first and then multiply it by 60. Okay, so let's do that. Let's do 0.78 times by 60 is 46.8. So 0.78 hours is 46.8 minutes. Now it doesn't say seconds, so we don't have to worry about that part. So 2.78 hours would be 2 hours and 46.8 minutes. And that's all you do there. So the trick is look at the point of an hour. So like if it was 2.5 hours, we obviously know that that's 2.5 hours. So 2 hours, 30 minutes. We do that intuitively. but that's because we do a half times by 60, which gives us 30 minutes. Okay, so then we've got some ratios. So Alice and Ellie share some money in the ratio 4:7. So let's just visualize that. Alice gets 4 parts and Ellie gets 7 parts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So how many parts are there in total? 7 plus 4 is 11. So therefore Alice is getting 4/11ths of the total of the money and Ellie is getting 7/11ths. Ooh. Now the question says, what percentage of the money does Ellie get? Well, Ellie gets 7/11ths, so we just need to turn 7/11ths into a percentage. Now to turn a fraction into a percentage, we simply divide it. So 7, what does this line here mean? It means divide. So we do 7 divided by 11. That gives it to us in decimal form. And then we multiply it by 100. So 7 over 11 is 0.63636 recurring. So let's multiply that by 100. And that gives me 63.63 recurring percent. Okay, so the trick is to turn a fraction into a percentage. You could either just type it like that into your calculator or turn it into a decimal first. And then how do you turn a decimal into a percentage? You simply multiply it by 100. Both options will give you the same thing, but the important thing is to turn your ratios into fractions so that you can then turn them into percentages. Okay, and percentage increase. So the price of Amelia's house is £395,000 in 2021. In 2022, the price has increased by 11%. In some cases, it may have increased by a lot more, but Amelia's house in particular rose by 11%. So what I want to do, especially because this is a calculator paper, I probably want to turn my percentage into a multiplier. So the original amount, £395,600, is worth 100% of the value because that was what it started at. So 100% is always your beginning value. It's increased by 11%. So what's 100 plus 11? That's 111%. Now, what does percent mean? Percent means out of 100 or divided by 100. Okay, so percent, instead of this, I'm going to say 111 divided by 100. So type that into your calculator, 111 divided by 100. You'll get your multiplier, which is 1.11. Okay, so once you've got your multiplier, as the name suggests, you just multiply your value. So you do 395,600 times by 1.11, which would give you 395,600 times by 1.11 is 439,116. Now you could also have worked out 11% and then added it on if you like, but sometimes they might give you a trickier question where it's repeated percentage increase, so get into the habit of understanding multipliers. And that's your final answer. Now percentage decrease, we do the same thing. So Reese bought a car for £29,500. So that is 100% of the original value. Now, as we know, cars and most things depreciate. They go down in value. So sometimes they might use the word depreciate. Now, depreciate just means goes down in value. Okay, so reduces in value. So his car started off with 29,500 and it was reduced by 7%. So if we started off with 100% and then 7% got taken off, what are we left with? 93%. Now, using the same thought process, what does percent mean? It means out of 100. So what does out of 100 mean? It means divided by 100. So 93 divided by 100 is 0.93. So your multiplier is 0.93. So obviously it's less than 1 because it's gone down in value. So we just do 29,500 times by 0.93, which gives me 29,500 times 0.93 gives me 27,435 pounds. So that is the new price of the car. Cars generally not a great investment, as they will always, unless they're super special, go down in value. You could also have worked out 7% and then subtracted it, but once again, if you get repeated percentage change, it's good to know your multipliers. Okay, so the ratio of right-handed to left-handed students is 17 to 15, and we need to write this ratio in the form n to 1. So all that means is that I want to get the second part of the ratio in the form 1 and figure out what this n must be. Well, how do I get from 15 to 1? I divide by 15. So I'm going to have to do the same to this side to keep the ratios in proportion. What's 17 divided by 15? 1.13 recurring. So I just write 1.13 recurring over here, and that is it. N just means it's, I don't know what it is yet, but I know that it needs to be in the form of something to 1. So I divide by whatever it is. Let's just do a quick other example. So if it was, let's say, I don't know, 8 to 2 in the form n to 1, what have I done to the 2? I've divided it by 2 to get to 1. So 8 would also be divided by 2. So that would be 4 to 1. That's just a super easy example. That's all n to 1 form means. Don't let it scare you. Okay, now, Shania is an exercise physiologist, and it takes her 70 minutes to conduct an initial assessment for 5 of her patients. So 70 minutes is how long it takes for 5 patients. How long would it take her to assess 19 patients? Well, the best thing to do with a question like this is to figure out how long it would take for 1 patient. So if it takes 5 patients 70 minutes, I could divide 70 by 5 to figure out how much it would take for 1 patient. So 70 divided by 5 gives me 14. Let's double check. 14 times 5 is 70. So yeah, I know I'm right. So for 1 patient, it takes her 14 minutes. So you know 1 patient is 14 minutes. And we want to figure out how long it would take her for 19 patients. So what would we do? Well, how do we get from 19 to 1? Or 1 to 19, sorry. We multiply by 19. So we're going to have to do the same to this side. So 14 times by 19 is 266 minutes. Now, 266 minutes, this question doesn't ask us to write it in hours and minutes, but let's just see what we could do. So 266 minutes, if I divide that by 60, that gives me 4.43 recurring hours. So that would be 4 hours. And what is this is annoying because I don't have my proper calculator, but 0.43 recurring times by 60. It says 25.9, so I don't know if I typed in the proper recurring, it might have been 26 minutes. So you check on your calculators, it might be 4 hours and 26 minutes, or it might be 25.9 recurring. I'm not sure because I'm using my phone. But either way, it doesn't ask you to do that, so 266 minutes would have been absolutely fine. Now, if she works for 102 minutes, how many patients can she assess? Okay, so 102 equals how many patients? Well, I know that 14 minutes is 1 patient. So I can think, okay, what do I need to multiply 14 by to get to 102? So let's try doing 102 divided by 14. Oh, that gives me not a very nice number. 7.28571429. So 14 times by 7.2857 gives me 102. So that means that she could assess 7 patients, because 14 times by 7 is 98 minutes. Okay, so she's 14 times by 7. That's going to be 7 patients that she can see. Obviously, she's got those 4 minutes left over, but you can't just assess a patient, like, not give them a full amount of time. So in real life, when we've got a decimal, we have to round it up or down to what makes sense. So 7 patients she can assess properly, and then she's got 4 minutes left over. Maybe she can go to the toilet in that time or have a snack. So the answer would be 7 patients. Okay, scale diagram. Oh, there's no question here. So let's just make up a question then. So let's just say, here's a desk. In real life, it's 2 meters by 1.8 meters. And this is a scale diagram where 1 centimeter represents 50 centimeters in real life. Okay, so with a scale diagram, you'll be given the scale and maybe like a little scale drawing that you have to draw accurately on a scale diagram. So we know that each centimetre represents 50 centimetres in real life. So 2 metres is going to be 200 centimetres. So therefore, 200 centimetres is the width of the desk and 180 centimetres is the length of the desk. So I know that on my grid, 1 centimetre represents 50 centimetres. So I would, let's just change colour. I would divide by 50 because I know 1 centimetre is 50 centimetres in real life. So divide by 50, 200 divided by 50 is 4 centimetres. So on the scale diagram, I would go 1, 2, 3, 4. And this would represent 2 meters, but on the scale diagram it's 4 centimeters. And then 101.8 centimeters, well, let's divide that by 50 as well. So 180 divided by 50 is 3.6 centimeters. So 1, 2, 3, and then 0.6 would be 3/5 of the way, so roughly there. If it was a centimetre square grid, you could use it to measure 0.6 centimetres. So then you just join it up and there's your desk. 4 centimetres by 3.6 centimetres represents this in real life. Okay, we have another question about toilet roll. So here are 2 offers for packs of toilet roll. The first one is Clean Ease, the second is Cushionelle. So Kaylin wants to buy 20 toilet rolls. Which is the cheaper offer? So let's have a look. Now, Clean Ease, you can buy a pack of 4 for £3.24 and you get a 1/3 discount. So therefore, a pack of 4 for Clean Ease, let's do Clean Ease in this colour, would be, well, I'm being offered a 1/3 off, so £3.24, and I want to take a 1/3 of that. So £3.24 divided by 3 is £1.08. So a 1/3 off would be £3.24, take away £1.08, which is 3.24, take 1.08, £2.16. Okay, so a pack of 4 using this discount of a 1/3 would be £2.16. Now the next offer, Cushionelle, you get a pack of 5. They cost £3.40. Oh, buy 2 packs, get 1 free. Okay, so a pack of 5 is £3.40. Buy 2 packs, get 1 free. So 3 packs, therefore, would cost how much 2 packs would, because you get the 1 free. So £3.40 times by 2 would give you £6.80. So 3 packs would cost £6.80. And that would be a 3 pack of 5. So in total, 15 toilet rolls would cost £6.80 here. That's not bad, really. Whilst here, a pack of 4 is £2.16. Now, you want to get 20 toilet rolls. So how many lots of packs of 4 are you going to have to buy? You will have to buy 5 packs of 4, because 4 times 5 is 20. So for 20 rolls, you would be paying £2.16, 2.16 times by 5, £10.80. Okay, so that's how much it would cost here. Now let's think. 15 rolls is £6.80, and then you could buy 1 more pack of 5. Another 5 rolls would be £3.40 to get you to 20 rolls. So therefore, 20 rolls would be £6.80 plus £3.40, which is £10.20. So therefore, if he wants to go for the cheaper offer, he should get cushion L. And that's how we do that question. So we're trying to get make it comparable and figure out how we could make 20 out of this offer. So with a pack of 4, we need 5 lots of that. With this one, we get a pack of 5, but you get 2 packs, 1 free. So we figured out that we could get 3 packs of 5 for £6.80. Sorry. Okay, next we've got a ratio to a percentage. So the ratio of red sweets to yellow sweets is 2 to 5. So it always just helps to visually represent what's happening. So red to yellow. What is the percentage of red sweets in the pack? Okay, well, once again, I got my ratio. How many parts do I have in total? I have 7. And how many parts are red? 2 out of 7. How do I turn a decimal into a percentage? I know that this line here means divide. So I do 2 divided by 7, which is, let's write it here, 2 divided by 7 is 0. Oh, that's a funny 0. 0.28571429. How do I turn a decimal into a percentage? I simply times it by 100. So that would be 28.57% are red sweets, and the rest would be yellow. Okay, so use your visual diagram to represent what's going on. You know that's 2/7. 2 divided by 7 gives you this decimal. Once you've got a decimal, to turn it to a percentage, you just multiply by 100. Okay, and now we've got an equation to a percentage. So you are given that 4y equals 12x. What is x as a percentage of y? So 4y is 12x. Now, remember, when you are manipulating equations, as long as you do the same thing to both sides, the equations will still stay in the same proportion. So I know that both of these sides have a factor of 4. So I could divide both sides by 4, so that I'm just left with a single y. So y would be 3x. So what is x as a percentage of y? So I could write this as a ratio. So 1y, because y, it just means there's one lot of it. 1y is equivalent to 3 lots of x. So x as a percentage of y, well, 3 lots of this make up 100%. So I'd do 100, my y, divided by 3. So 1 divided by 3y is x. So therefore, as a percentage, what's 1 over 3? 1 divided by 3 is 0.3 recurring. So multiply it by 100 to turn it into a percentage. 33.3 recurring percent. So y, x, hold on. Yeah, x as a percentage of y. So x equals a third of y. So therefore x is a third of whatever y is. Turn it into a decimal and multiply it. And final question, rate of output. So 12 machines take 34 hours to make a number of toys. Now with these kinds of questions, they are rate of output. So a good way to start is by figuring out how long it would take one machine or one builder or one worker, whatever it is, to do the thing by themselves. So if 12 machines take 34 hours to make a number of toys, let's figure out how many hours they are actually working for. So each machine works for 34 hours. So 12 times 34 tells me that in total, that's 408 machine hours. So if it was just one machine, it would take that poor little machine 408 hours to complete the work. So we are told all 12 machines start working at 9 AM on Monday morning. Okay. And if they all did that, then it would take them 34 hours. However, sadly, 2 of the machines overheat and stop working at 11 AM. So we need to think 12 machines are working for how many hours? From 9 till 11 is 2 hours. So in total, they have worked 24 machine hours. Okay, so from 9 AM to 11 AM, 24 machine hours have been completed. We need a total of 408. Okay, so at 11 AM, the rest of the machines continue to work. So I need to complete 408 machine hours. I take 24 because that's already been completed. So I have 384 machine hours left to work. I have 10 machines left because 2 of them have broken. So 10 machines need to complete 384 machine hours. So that would mean that 384 divided by 10 is 38.4 real-time hours to complete 384 machine hours. So from 11 AM onwards, I need another 38.4 hours to complete everything. So from 11 AM on the Monday to 11 AM on the Tuesday, that's 24 hours. Oops, 24 hours. And I need 38 hours. So, hold on, I'm not writing that right. So Monday 11 AM they start. No, Monday 9 AM they start, and they've worked for 2 hours. Then from 11 AM on the Monday to 11 AM on the Tuesday, that's 24 hours. If I add another 10 hours, that would be Tuesday 11 PM. They have worked for another 10 hours. So in total, that is 34 extra hours, and I need another 4.4 hours. So 11 PM, 12, 1, 2, 3 AM. So 3 AM would be an extra 4 hours, and then I have 0.4 hours, so 4/10 of an hour, or 0.4 times by 60 is 24 minutes. So 3:24 AM is when they would finish, and that would be on the Wednesday. Oh, but it didn't even ask me that. It just said, how long will it take for the toys to be made? Okay, so the 2 hours it took from 9 AM to 11 AM, and then 38.4 hours. So in total, 40.4 hours. And that's why it's important to read the question. Otherwise, you might end up doing extra work. Okay, so here we have a pie chart, and the key thing to know about a pie chart is that it's a circle. So therefore, all angles inside the pie chart must add up to 360 degrees. Okay, now I'm being told that the table shows the favourite ice cream of 80 people. So that means I want to split the pie chart up into 80 equal parts. So I could do 360 divided by 80. And what does that give me? I'm being lazy with my calculator because I can. So that gives me 4.5 degrees. So that means that one person on this pie chart represents 4.5 degrees. Now, if you know what one person represents, here you've got the frequency. Now, what does frequency mean? It just means how many. So in this case, how many people? So in this case, 20 people like chocolate ice cream is their favourite. How could I work out what the angle of that is? Well, I know one person is 4.5, so I just do 20 times 4.5. I do that for every single person. So let's have a look at what that becomes. 4.5 times by 20 is 90 degrees. So that's the same here. 4.5 times by 25 is 112.5 degrees. And 15 times by 4.5 is 67.5 degrees. Now let's just double check that this all adds up to 360, otherwise you might have gone wrong somewhere. So 67.5 plus 112.5 plus 180 gives me 360. So great, you're spot on. So now you've got your angles. Now the first two will be pretty easy because they are 90-degree angle. So you could just say, okay, there's a 90-degree, obviously you'd measure it accurately. That's a 90-degree angle, and let's label it. Don't forget to label your region. So that's chocolate. And over here, I've got another 90-degree angle, and that represents strawberry. Then what you're going to do is get your protractor, line it up against the line. So the little 0 thing is here. And then read from the outside. So the first angle we'll do is 67.5. So depending on which way you're doing it, which way your 0 starts, I'm trying to visualize a protractor. Let's say that the 0 starts from here. So you go from 0 to 67.5 on your protractor, draw a little point here, and then join it up. And that would represent your mint. And obviously you could, but you don't need to measure the last angle because that's all that's left. So that would be your vanilla. Okay, so the key to drawing a pie chart is working out what one item would be on the pie chart. And you do 360 divided by your total frequency to figure that out. Next, we've got the range. So the expressions below represent a set of numbers. Write an expression for the range. Now, what is the range? The range is the difference between the largest value and the smallest value. So we say largest value, take smallest. In this case, the largest value would be 17x and the smallest would be x. So 17x, take x, leaves you with 16x. And that's it. That's your expression for the range of the data. Largest value, take the smallest value. It's just they've represented in algebraic terms here. Next, we have a slightly trickier question. So here are two sets of numbers, A and B. Set A are these 4 numbers, and set B are these 5. Obviously, we don't know one of them. The ratio of mean of set A to the mean of set B is 5 to 352. Work out the value of x. Okay, so how do I work out the mean? Well, the mean is the sum of your values. So add all your values together divided by the number of values you have. So for set A, that would be 320 plus 140 plus 200 plus 220 divided by 4 because there are 4 values. So let's just add them up. 320 plus 140 plus 200 plus 220 is 880. And 880 over 4 is 220. So the mean of set A is 220. Now let's figure out what we could do with set B. So set B, the sum of all the values would be 380 plus 450 plus 360 plus 480 plus x over 5. So what are the values? Well, 380 plus 450 plus 360 plus 480 gives me 1670 plus x over 5. So the mean of set B would be that. Now, I know that the ratio of the mean of set A to the mean of set B is 5 to 352 parts. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts. And I'm not going to draw 352. I'm just going to do dot, dot, dot. Okay. So I know that 5 parts must make 220. So I could use that to figure out what 1 part must be. So if 5 parts are 220, I do 220 divided by 5, which is 44. So 1 part must be 44. So if 1 part is 44 and the mean of set B is 352 parts, we just do 352 times by 44, which is 352 times by 44. Have I done something wrong? That's a very big number. Okay, let's just go with it. So 1 part is 44. Maybe it's supposed to say 35. Let's assume it says 35, because I think that's just way too big. So the mean of set A to the mean of set B is 35 times by 44. 35 times by 44 is 1540. Okay, so I guess nope, they must have wanted it to be a really big number. That's fine. So 352 times by 44, let's just write that out, is 15,488. Okay. So I'm just going to rub some stuff out here. So you know that the mean of set B is 15,488, and 1670 plus x over 5 gives you that. So what we could do is rearrange this equation. We multiply both sides by 5 and this number is going to be ridiculous. Oh gosh. So 77,440 equals 1670 plus x. So therefore what must x be? Well, if we take 1670 from both sides, we'd be left with x. So take 1640 from both sides. That gives me 75,800. What a big number. Now let's just double check that that works. Does 75,800 plus 380 plus 450 plus 360 plus 480 divided by 5 give you 15? Oh, I think something's gone wrong in this question. Maybe I haven't added them right. I think the question is just a bit strange because that's such a large number. So Okay, so final topics, probability. So we're told that a biased spinner is spun, and biased just means that it's like unfair. So it might be heavily weighted in order for it to land on a certain side. So a biased spinner is spun and the results are recorded in the table. The spinner is spun once more. Use the table to estimate the probability that the spinner will land on red. Okay, so we want to figure out how many times in total the spinner has been spun. So where's my little calculator? Well, phone. So it has landed on red 21 times, orange 33 times, yellow 5 times, blue 17 times, and green 48 times. So in total, the spinner has been spun 124 times. And how many times has it landed on red? 21. So the probability that the spinner will land on red is 21 out of 124. Okay, so the way you estimate probability is your total frequency of how many times it's been spun, and then your desired object. Okay, so always work out how many times it's been spun, and that will be your relative frequency. So if the spinner is spun another 300 times, how many times would you expect it to land on green? So let's work out what is the probability of it landing on green. It lands on green 48 times out of 124. Can we simplify that? 48 over 124. That's an ugly number on the phone. Let's just leave it as 48 over 124. So to work out an estimation of, or an expectation, you work out the probability of the thing happening. So you do probability times by number of trials. Okay, in this case, it spun another 300 times. So the probability of it landing on green is 48 over 124, and I just multiply that by 300. So type that into your calculator, and it should be 116.13 times. So obviously it can't land on something 0.13 of a time, so we just round it to 116 times. Or you could round it to 117, depends on whether you're rounding up or down. Okay, on a biased dice, the probability of getting a 2 is 0.4. The dice is rolled 180 times. How many times would you expect to roll a 2? Okay, so for expected value, what we do, like we did on the other side, we do the probability of that event occurring multiplied by the number of trials or number of plays or whatever it is. So in this case, the probability of rolling a 2 is 0.4, and the dice is rolled 180 times. So I just do 0.4 times by 180, which gives me 72. So I'd expect it to land on a 2 72 times. Finally, we've got Patricia and Rosie, and they are taking their driving tests. Now, the probability that Patricia will pass is 0.8, and the probability that Rosie will pass is 0.75. Draw a tree diagram. Okay, so we've got Rosie here. Or shall we do Patricia first because she's mentioned first? Okay, so Patricia for the first part. And the probability of her passing is, what did they say, 0.8. So therefore, the probability of her failing, now probability on the branches always needs to add up to 1. So these little things, the probability here, whatever it is, so like let's say it's 0.4, this would need to be 0.6. Okay, so on the branches, each branch, and this is a branch, needs to add sum to make 1. So each little sub branch also needs to sum to make 1. So here's 0.8, here would be 0.2. Then stemming from Patricia, there are 2 pathways we can take. So if Patricia passes, Rosie might also pass, but she might also fail. But we also need to account for if Patricia fails, Rosie might also pass or she might fail. So this is how a tree diagram works. We cover all of the options So what's the probability that Rosie will pass? That's 0.75. So I write 0.75 here. And remember, probability must sum to make 1. So 0.75 plus 0.25 makes 1. So the probability that Rosie fails is 0.25. Okay, so there's my tree diagram. The first person's Patricia, then Rosie. Work out the probability that both girls fail their driving test. Okay, so when I'm working out the probability using a tree diagram, I go along the branches, along the route I need to take. So if Patricia fails, that's 0.2. And when I go along the branches, I multiply the probability. So the probability Patricia fails is 0.2, and the probability that Rosie fails is 0.25. So I just do 0.2 times by 0.25, which is 0.05. So the probability of them failing, both failing, is only 5%. So that's pretty good. It doesn't matter whether you leave it as a decimal, percentage, fraction, whatever. Generally, just leave it as a decimal because that's what they've given it to you in the question. Now, work out the probability that only one girl passes their driving test. So what are the options here? Let's rub out all this working. So one girl passing, what route could I take? Well, Patricia could pass. So we could go pass and then fail. So 0.8 times by 0.25, which is 0.8 times 0.25, 0.2. So remember, when you go along the branches, you multiply the probabilities. What other option we have? We can't do pass and then pass because that means both girls have passed and we only want one girl. So if Patricia fails and Rosie passes, that's 0.2 times by 0.75. So 0.2 times by 0.75 is 0.15. Okay, so if she takes this route, let's maybe choose a different colour just to highlight this. So we go pass, fail. The probability of that happening is 0.2. Fail, pass. The probability of that happening is 0.15. So when using the OR rule for probability, if either one event or another event can happen, we add the probabilities. Like if I could be caught on a red light or a amber light, my probability increases because I have two options that could happen. So once we've worked out what the probabilities are, if more than one option can occur, we add the probabilities together. So 0.2 plus 0.15 is 0.35. So that would be your final answer. And yeah, that's it. So that's it for paper 2. Well done if you've watched all the way through. Actually, if you have watched all the way through, drop a comment below so that I can see who has made it.